Given the time that we've got, we probably have time for a few questions with our two speakers and then move on to the small discussion groups in the time we've got left. Let me just make one comment, if I could, please. Another quote, and some of you may have heard this before. This is from Troy Braxton last year in the Weekend Australian, which was talking about a hypothetical conversation through that wonderful political satire Utopia. And the head of Utopia, Tony, meets with the defence chiefs. This is the quote. Tony met with defence chiefs about a new white paper. Is it designed to protect Australia against China, he asks. They nod. What exactly are we protecting, he further asks. Our trade routes? They nod. China is Australia's #1 trading partner. Tony sums up. So under this scenario, we're spending close to $30 billion a year to protect our trade with China from China. They nod.
Thank you very much for a very interesting and illuminating speech. My name is Ian Porter. My concern is that this government is highly captured. I'm friends with an MP, and he has told me in no uncertain terms he totally agrees with the views of probably everybody in this room. However, the chances of changing the Australian government without a revolution on the streets is so locked in, they're so locked in and intermeshed with America in terms of the security, in terms of the economics, BlackRock, etc. And everything seems to flow back to the big thing about US hegemony, which is to defend the US dollar and US dominance outside of their own region, which is insanity, to think that they can control the whole world in a declining empire with $35 trillion of debt. Do you think that the possible only way out of this, other than the methods that you described, which I'm certain are the right ideas, but the basis of being able to implement them are going to be incredibly difficult, that the only way out would be a total collapse of the US in civil war, which is highly possible, no matter who gets in the presidential election. The US dollar is ready to tank. I met with Penny Wong a month ago when she was, you might not know this, but she was Prime Minister for about 3 days while the Prime Minister was outside the country. And I asked her, why would we not join BRICS? And she burst into laughter. She said, we will not be joining BRICS. So my answer to the question is, do you think that US hegemony as a result of a total meltdown in the US monetary empire will be the final nail in the coffin for this demonic country that controls all of the wars that have happened, that they've been involved in? They're now getting involved in a war with Israel. Somebody asked me the other day, they said, do you think Israel's going to win? And I said, no chance. The Americans are their buddies. The Americans are their alliance. Anyway, that's my question.
Is this on?
Yeah, this one.
Oh, this one? It's very easy and and very wise to be able to point out the solution and the path forward. But you're right. There's not a chance in hell of me having any success in this coming to fruition because our government, and it's not a labor liberal problem. They're identical as far as I can tell. That's not going to shift it. And unfortunately, the Greens are still decades away from power. There's an expression that covers this, and that's we're fucked. But this came up at a previous conference just a few weeks ago, and I said there was two things that two catastrophes that could force change upon our government. And you're right, one of them is the collapse of the United States internally as it tears itself apart in a civil war-like situation, if that comes to pass. It's looking pretty bad. It may get worse, it may get better, but that's one of the catastrophes. And the other catastrophe, of course, is a climate change of such magnitude that states in our region start to collapse inwardly, and the world fragments into inward-looking states, and the U.S. sort of goes back to the Western Hemisphere. I think you're right. It'll take a catastrophe to get our government to think differently.
Could we just have one question from Bethany, please, then we'll move to the discussion.
Look, I think we have to either decide we don't have the workshops or we have more questions. Maybe the consensus is people want to have the questions. If that's what people want, I think we go with it.
Okay, I'm fine with questions.
I was going to just add something to what you said, Alan. Within the government, of the people, by the people, for the people. We don't have it now, right? It's a task we're all involved with. I'm not negative about this. Whether it takes a year, 2 years, 10 years, and I'll be gone. You people and others will take the fight on. We have to change the situation, and we will. What we represent here is an amazing group of people who are working on this now out in the community, and we'll keep working on it. There may be a crisis that helps them along or provides an opportunity that makes it quicker and faster. We cannot give up working on our mission.
Thank you. Bevan, I just want to talk, first of all, respond to your comment there, then I have a question. Yeah, we need to change it, but how do we change it? I haven't heard any solutions yet. So, is the solution through the democratic process? I would like to think it is. We have a two-party system here, like a lot of countries. It doesn't really matter who we've got in, right? We've got the Labour Party have just continued on with the previous government's policies in relation to AUKUS. They have no integrity, they're just carrying on. They're obviously in the pocket of the Americans as well. For example, another example here, there may be times when the opposition, for example, may say, well, we're going to fight this particular policy, misinformation, disinformation bill. We now hear from the opposition that they believe in our freedom of speech. What a load of nonsense. They're the ones that introduced it in the first place. So these people have no integrity, we can't trust them, and in the end they're in it for themselves. So what's the answer? I think it's a democratic process, and we should be looking at, as a people, getting more of us into Parliament, independents, for example, and then bands together once we're in there. We are not going to succeed if we just leave it up to these politicians. We just flip-flop from left to right, left to right, left to right, and we get absolutely nowhere. So we need to stand up, and we need to actually get into Parliament and fight for it ourselves. That's number one. Which is what I'm doing, by the way. Number two, the self-defence policy. Yeah, very laudable, I understand it all, and I'm in agreement. But has anybody done any investigation into the repercussions of actually saying to the Americans, no, I'm sorry, we are pulling out? So has any work been done into that? What would Australia be able to combat from a repercussions perspective, and what would Australia be able to absorb from a repercussions perspective? Because they're not going to say, yeah, of course, off you go. They're not. They're going to push back. So we need to be strong, but can we do it? I know so, but we want it. Look, we talk about all these things here, we want this, we want to fight AUKUS. We can talk about it till we're blue in the face, but if we're not willing to actually do something about it at a democratic level, then we'll be talking about it next year and the year after and the year after. I'll leave it there.
Look, I don't think I'm sorry, my voice is terrible, but I don't think we made a proper decision there. Quite a few people wanted to go to the group discussion. only the loudest voices were heard about questions.
Adrian wants to go to that. I think the general consensus was people did want to ask questions, but the suggestion is, and there's 1, 2, 3 hands up, so obviously there's a need. But questions are questions, they're not statements, long statements that take up time that other people then miss out. Our suggestion is that get your cup of tea at 3:30 and have those discussions around the table there. Is that okay? Adrian.
Just referring to the idea that the committee decided that it would be in favour of alternative defence but not non-violence. I wonder whether or not there is space to allow for non-cooperation and deniability through non-cooperation, which is a non-violent response, and that be included, and also that a requirement that research is done into social defence. Professor Brian Martin from University of Wollongong has done a lot of work on that, and that way we can introduce the idea of non-violence without it being laughable or so those 2 points. I wonder if that's possible.
I'll just quickly answer by saying that yes, all those ideas are well worth investigating further, absolutely. But in formulating this policy for IPAN to propagate as an alternative, because at the moment the popular thinking is we need them to look after us. Our IPAN position is that yes, we can look after ourselves. What is the way of doing it? And to have a credible idea to put to the broader public, we felt that the military defence, self-defence, was a credible option at this stage. That doesn't preclude pursuing and looking at the things you've mentioned. And we said in the group we respect that line of thinking.
Question over here now.
Hi, my name's Lee, and I just want to bring a perspective from just somebody. I don't know as much as all of you, but I know enough to know in my gut what's going on and have for a long time. But what I see is that at that macro level, we haven't got a chance in hell of doing anything at that level on its own. But what I also see is in this room is a group of really committed individuals, but we're always the same people, and we're not getting to the actual people with the right rhetoric. So today, listening to that beautiful man talking about what's happening, actually the university thing, the guy that was talking about the university, and he was giving this incredible information about what's happening in universities, and so was that young woman. But also there's all this great academic stuff held out there, but it's in the jargon and it's in that form that people haven't got a clue what's going on. And because they're listening to TV, you know, is there some way that we can also get that rhetoric brought down into something that we as people can spread that is simple and it's direct and that people will get it here? Like, it has to be narrative. I think.
Can I quickly say, that was the purpose of having these working groups sitting down and talking. The idea was, how do we work out a strategy, a communication strategy? How do we present our message in a way that gets to people who every day are struggling to survive and pay bills? How does this affect your life, you know? If you're sitting next to someone in the bus or in the train or at work, how do you say, this is terribly important and this is how it will affect you and your life? That's communicating that message is our big problem. Challenge, I say, big challenge.
Yes, this will be really short, it's just a question. And the question is, would the situation in the Middle East be resolved by the US stopping the sale of arms to Israel? And this isn't pie in the sky stuff, because George H. Bush did this in the mid-1990s, and it needs to be done again, because we're asking for a ceasefire, but there'll be no ceasefire when the person that you're asking is having their arms sold to them by one of the most powerful nations in the world. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. In 1956, during the Suez Crisis, the United States and the Soviet Union told Britain, France, and Israel, stop. And they stopped. And if the United States decided that it was not going to replace the war stocks that Israel has, Israel would stop. They would have no other choice.
How much do they produce themselves? How much military does Israel produce itself? How much armaments?
Oh, I don't know. Yeah.
I'm convinced that there's going to be a war with China, probably within the next 5 years. So my question is, do you agree? How will it start? And what do we do next? How do we respond?
I would certainly say a war with China is a possibility. And I wouldn't say it's guaranteed. And I certainly hope it doesn't come about. But there's a couple of scenarios here about how it starts. And one, of course, is involves Taiwan, with the U.S. responding to a mainland China's attempts to reabsorb Taiwan by force. I'm not sure how likely that is. In fact, I think it's not terribly likely. It's possible, not terribly likely. But I think a much more likely way for such a war to start is you have two warships sailing in the South China Sea or through the Straits of Taiwan, and through miscalculation, one of the ships collides with the other ships, or an American ship gets cut in half through an accidental encounter. And from that miscalculation, things accelerate as both sides escalate. And wars through accident, when there's such high tensions, come about. And the way to prevent a war by accident is you build all kinds of bridges and rear communication lanes so that you have an opportunity to de-escalate. And right now, both sides, and I'm saying both sides, are putting the emphasis on escalation. And I don't think either side will benefit from a war, and I don't think either side wants one. But it's certainly, yes, within the realm of possibility.
Thanks, Albert. Ron, if you had a very short question.
We also have some questions from online.
Oh, do we?
Yes.
Okay, Ron, I'm going to give precedence to the people online because they're part of this conference and they deserve to have their questions answered as well. What we hope is that this will be the last sort of spell, and we need to have those discussions because people have got ideas and you need to be getting them down on those books on your table. Okay, over to you.
Yeah, so firstly we got Ron. He asked, can we ask the Australian government to be put on the terrorist list like the US and other Israel parties? And also Jeff Holland mentioned that we need experts in defense strategy to put together a slick professional video, 15 minutes, outlining why we don't need AUKUS submarines or the AUKUS alliance, what alternative defense strategies could actually look like. This video could be distributed wide in the community. Thanks.
Really great suggestion. Over to you.
No, good suggestion, yes. Let's do that.
I think the little video we saw from the Greens today about AUKUS was really well constructed and could be very influential in educating, and similarly, so I think that's a really good idea. But I think we will finish up now.